The stars stretched endlessly beyond the viewport of the Aurora as Commander Jake Morrison reviewed the day's survey data. His ship had been mapping uncharted systems for 3 months now, and the work had become routine. Too routine, he thought as he rubbed his tired eyes. "Commander, I'm picking up something strange," Lieutenant Sophie Blake called from her station. She was the ship's communications officer, young but talented. Her fingers moved quickly across her console as lines of data scrolled past. Jake walked over to her station and leaned in to look at the screen. "What am I looking at?" "It's an encrypted signal." "Strong one too. But sir, there shouldn't be anything out here. We're hundreds of light years from any known colony or outpost." Jake felt a cold sensation creep down his spine. "Can you decode it?" Sophie bit her lip, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. "Give me a few minutes. The encryption is complex, but I think I can break it." The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of the ship's engines and the clicking of Sophie's keyboard. Jake waited, his instinct telling him that something was very wrong. After 15 minutes, Sophie suddenly stopped typing. "Got it," she whispered. Her face had gone pale. "Put it on screen." The main display flickered to life, showing lines of translated text. Jake began reading and his blood ran cold. The message was a communication between multiple alien species, discussing coordination and timing. But it was the subject matter that made his hands shake. They were talking about Earth, about humanity, about the human problem that needed to be solved before it was too late. "This can't be real," Sophie said quietly. "Sir, according to this, there are 12 different alien civilizations working together. They call themselves the Convergence, and they've been watching us, manipulating us for centuries." Jake kept reading. The message spoke of sabotage peace talks, of conflicts engineered to keep humanity divided, of technology secretly destroyed before it could advance too far. The Convergence had been pulling strings behind every major war and disaster in human history. But the worst part was at the end. The final section detailed a plan for a coordinated attack, a single massive strike designed to wipe out human civilization completely. The timeline suggested it would happen within months. "Copy everything," Jake ordered. "Every single byte of data. Then plot a course back to Earth, maximum speed." "Sir, that will burn through our fuel reserves. We won't have enough for the return survey." "I don't care about the survey. We need to get this information home now." Sophie worked quickly while Jake alerted the rest of the crew. Within an hour, the Aurora had changed course and was racing back toward Earth at full speed. But they weren't alone for long. 3 days into their journey, the ship's sensors detected multiple contacts behind them. Fast-moving vessels closing quickly. "Their Convergence scout ship," Sophie said, her voice tight with fear. "They must have detected us intercepting their message." Jake gripped the armrests of his command chair. The Aurora was an exploration vessel, not a warship. They had minimal weapons and shields designed for asteroid deflection, not combat. "Can we outrun them?" The navigator shook his head. "Negative, sir. They're faster than us, then we fight," Jake said quietly. "Load every weapon we have. Divert power from non-essential systems to the engines and shields." The crew scrambled to battle stations as the alien ships closed in. Jake had never commanded a ship in combat before. He'd trained for it at the academy, but that was simulation, not reality. Now lives depended on his decisions. The first alien ship opened fire. Energy bolts slammed into the Aurora's shields, causing the whole vessel to shudder. Warning lights flashed across every console. "Return fire," Jake shouted. The Aurora's small defensive cannon spat back, but the shots bounced harmlessly off the alien ship's shields. Jake cursed. They were completely outmatched. "Prepare for emergency hyperspace jump," he ordered. "I don't care if the calculations aren't perfect. Jump on my mark." "Sir, an unplotted jump could tear the ship apart," the navigator warned. "We're dead anyway if we stay here." "Do it." Another barrage hit the Aurora. This time the shields flickered and failed. The next shot would hit the hull directly. Jake counted down in his head, waiting for the hyperspace drive to charge. "Now!" he shouted. Reality twisted as the Aurora jumped. The stars outside stretched into lines of light, then everything went dark. The ship shook violently and Jake heard metal groaning under stress. Systems failed across the ship, but they were moving, racing through hyperspace at speeds that bent the laws of physics. "Damage report," Jake called out once the shaking stopped. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 5. Life support failing in section 7. Hyperspace drive is barely holding together." The reports came in rapid succession, each one worse than the last. "How long until we reach Earth?" 4 days if the drive holds. It was the longest 4 days of Jake's life. The crew worked around the clock to keep the Aurora together. 2 more systems failed during the journey. They lost main power twice and had to run on emergency backups. But somehow, impossibly, they made it. Earth appeared on the view screen like a blue jewel in the darkness. Jake had never been so happy to see home. Get me Admiral Henry Walsh at Earth Defense Command. Priority Alpha Channel. Sophie established the connection, and Admiral Walsh's weathered face appeared on screen. He was in his 60s, a veteran of the colony wars with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Commander Morrison, you're not due back for another 6 months. What's wrong? Sir, we need to meet in person. I have information about a threat to Earth, a serious threat, and we need to act now. Walsh studied Jake's face for a long moment. Then he nodded. Land at Edwards Spaceport. I'll meet you there personally. 2 hours later, Jake and Sophie stood in a secure briefing room at the spaceport. Admiral Walsh had brought 2 aides with him, both senior intelligence officers. Jake transferred all the data they'd collected from the Aurora's computers. As Walsh reviewed the information, his expression remained carefully neutral. But Jake noticed his jaw tighten and his knuckles whiten as he gripped the edge of the table. This is accurate? Walsh asked quietly. Yes, sir. We intercepted it directly from their communication network. Walsh was silent for a long time. Then he stood up. Come with me, both of you. What I'm about to show you is classified at the highest level. You will tell no one what you see or hear. Is that understood? Yes, sir, Jake and Sophie answered together. Walsh led them outside to a waiting vehicle. They drove for an hour into the desert, away from the base, away from everything. Finally, they stopped at what looked like an abandoned mining facility. But when Walsh pressed his hand against a hidden panel, a large section of ground opened up, revealing an elevator that descended deep into the earth. 15 years ago, Walsh said as they dropped hundreds of feet below the surface, an alien defector came to Earth. He warned us about the convergence. He told us what they'd been doing to us and what they planned to do. The elevator doors opened. Jake and Sophie stepped out into an enormous underground facility. The space was filled with ships, weapons, and technology unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Thousands of people worked at stations throughout the massive chamber. Humanity hasn't been idle, Commander, Walsh said. We've been preparing, and now thanks to you we know exactly when they're coming. Jake stared at the scene before him, his mind racing. Earth had known. They'd been getting ready for war. And he and Sophie had just given them the final piece of the puzzle. The secret war was about to begin. The underground facility stretched farther than Jake could see. Bright lights illuminated workstations where men and women in military uniforms and lab coats moved with purpose. The air smelled of metal and electricity. Above them, massive ships hung suspended in construction cradles, their hulls gleaming under the artificial lights. A woman in a white lab coat approached their group. She was in her 40s with sharp, intelligent eyes and dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Admiral Walsh, she said with a slight nod. Are these the officers from the Aurora? Yes, Commander Jake Morrison and Lieutenant Sophie Blake. Meet Dr. Lisa Chang. She's the director of Project Vanguard. Lisa shook their hands firmly. Welcome to the real Earth Defense Force. What you see on the surface is just for show. This is where the actual work happens. How long has this been here? Sophie asked, still staring at the enormous facility. Construction started 14 years ago. Lisa explained as she led them deeper into the complex. When the defector warned us about the convergence, world governments made a choice. They would pretend nothing was wrong while secretly preparing for war. Every nation contributed resources, scientists, and military personnel. They walked past a testing range where engineers were firing weapons at reinforced targets. The beams that shot from the guns were unlike anything Jake had seen before, leaving scorched patterns on the armor plates. Those are quantum disruptor rifles, Lisa said, noticing his interest. The convergence uses energy shields on everything, from personal armor to battleships. These weapons destabilize the quantum field that generates those shields. Once the shield collapses, conventional weapons work just fine. You reverse-engineered their technology? Jake asked. Lisa smiled slightly. In a way. We studied fragments recovered from covert encounters over the years. But here's the thing about humanity. We don't just copy. We improve. We innovate. We think differently. They entered a briefing room where a holographic display showed the solar system. Red dots marked various positions around Earth and the outer planets. The Convergence has been watching us for centuries, Lisa continued. They think they know how we fight because they've studied our wars. But they're about to learn something important. Humans are unpredictable. A man in a military flight suit entered the room. He was tall and lean, with the confident bearing of an experienced pilot. "Admiral on deck," he said, snapping a salute. "At ease, Colonel," Walsh replied. "Ryan Foster, meet Morrison and Blake. Ryan commands our Ghost Squadron." Ryan shook their hands. "Good to meet you both. I read the report about your escape from the Convergence Scouts." "Nice flying. Ghost Squadron?" Jake asked. "Follow me," Ryan said with a grin. They walked to a massive hangar bay. Inside, Jake counted 30 ships. But these weren't like any military vessels he'd ever seen. They were sleek and dark, covered in a material that seemed to absorb light. "Stealth frigates," Ryan explained. "They use phase-shifting technology. When active, they're invisible to every kind of sensor we know about. The Convergence won't see us coming until we're right on top of them." Sophie moved closer to one of the ships, reaching out but stopping before touching it. "How does it work?" "The hull material exists slightly out of phase with normal spacetime," Ryan said. "It's based on principles from quantum mechanics that the Convergence never explored. They're powerful, but they're not creative. They solve problems the same way every time." "That's our advantage," Walsh added. "They've conquered hundreds of worlds. They think they've seen every tactic, every strategy, but they've never fought humans before." Lisa gestured for them to follow her to another section. They passed through security checkpoints with armed guards and biometric scanners. Finally, they entered a lab filled with sophisticated equipment and computer displays. A man in his 30s looked up from a workstation. He had messy brown hair and wore glasses that had slipped down his nose. "Dr. Chang, the latest decryption results are ready." "This is Dr. Marcus Huang," Lisa introduced. "He's our expert on Convergence communication systems." Marcus pulled up data on a large screen. "Since the defector gave us access to their basic encryption protocols, I've been mapping their entire communication network, and I found something interesting." He displayed a complex web of connections between different alien species. "The Convergence isn't as unified as they want everyone to believe. These 12 species don't trust each other. They're allied out of fear and mutual benefit, not friendship." "Can we exploit that?" Jake asked. Marcus grinned. "Already working on it. If we can break their command codes, we could impersonate their ships on the network. Imagine the chaos we could cause." Sophie stepped forward, studying the data. "I might be able to help with that. I've been working with alien signal patterns for 3 years. "Then you're with me," Marcus said immediately. "We need all the help we can get." Walsh nodded his approval. "Blake, you'll work with Dr. Huang on communications warfare. Morrison, you're being assigned to combat operations." They moved to yet another section of the facility. Here one ship stood alone in a private bay. It was larger than the stealth frigates, but smaller than a traditional warship. Its design was aggressive and angular, built for speed and firepower. "This is the Defiant," Ryan said. "Our first true warship designed from the ground up to fight the Convergence. She's equipped with quantum disruptors, enhanced armor using composite materials they've never encountered, and engines that can outmaneuver their capital ships." "She's yours, Commander," Walsh said. Jake stared at the ship, his throat tight. "Sir, I'm an exploration officer, not a combat commander." "You outthought 3 Convergence scouts and brought critical intelligence home," Walsh replied. "That's exactly the kind of thinking we need. Traditional military tactics won't work against them. We need officers who can improvise and adapt." Over the next week, Jake received intensive briefings on everything Earth had learned about the Convergence. The defector, a member of a species called the Varen, had provided detailed information about each of the 12 species in the coalition. The Kreth were aggressive warriors who valued honor and direct combat. The Salt were patient strategists who planned centuries ahead. The Vex were technological perfectionists who believed their weapons were flawless. Each species had strengths, but more importantly, each had weaknesses. Jake also met his new crew. His second in command was Lieutenant Commander Nicole Barnes, a veteran officer with combat experience from the colony skirmishes. She was professional and competent, with short red hair and a no-nonsense attitude. "The crew is hand-picked, sir," Nicole told him as they toured the Defiant. "Every person on this ship volunteered, knowing what we're up against." Jake met them all. Engineers who could repair battle damage in minutes. Gunners who had trained for years on simulators built from Convergence combat data. Medical staff prepared for treating injuries from alien weapons. They were the best humanity had to offer. Meanwhile, Sophie worked with Marcus around the clock. They successfully cracked another layer of convergence encryption and began monitoring enemy communications in real time. What they heard confirmed their fears. The attack is scheduled for 6 months from now, Sophie reported at a command meeting. There's a celestial alignment that will allow them to jump their entire fleet directly into our solar system, bypassing the outer defenses. Then we have 6 months to prepare, Walsh said. Lisa, what's the status of the other projects? The Cascade device is in final testing, Lisa replied. If it works as designed, it will give us a significant tactical advantage. But it needs more time. You have 4 months, Walsh said. After that, we begin offensive operations. Jake looked up sharply. Offensive, sir? Walsh nodded grimly. We're not waiting for them to attack. The best defense is a good offense. We're going to hit them first, hit them hard, and make them think twice about coming to Earth. The plan began to take shape over the following weeks. Human ships would launch raids on isolated convergence outposts. Each raid would gather intelligence, capture technology, and most importantly, sow confusion and distrust among the alien species. Jake trained his crew relentlessly. They ran simulation after simulation, practicing tactics that no military academy would teach. They studied how to use a ship's weaknesses as weapons, how to make enemies see threats that didn't exist, how to win by thinking in ways the convergence wouldn't expect. Nicole proved to be an excellent second-in-command. She pushed the crew hard but fairly, and they respected her for it. More importantly, she understood Jake's unconventional approach to tactics. The convergence fights by the book, she said during one planning session, so we throw the book away. One night, unable to sleep, Jake walked through the facility. He found Sophie still working with Marcus in the communications lab. You should rest, he told her. Sophie shook her head. Can't. Every message we decode might contain information that saves lives. Marcus and I are close to something big. What do you mean? Marcus turned from his screen. We think we can not only intercept their messages, but also send fake ones. If we're right, we can make the convergent species think their allies are betraying them. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Information warfare. The most powerful kind, Sophie agreed. We can't match their fleet ship for ship, but we can make them fight each other. The command center buzzed with activity as Admiral Walsh stood before a holographic display showing the entire solar system. Red markers indicated known convergence observation posts scattered throughout nearby space. Blue markers showed the positions of Earth's hidden forces. Ladies and gentlemen, Walsh began, addressing the assembled officers and scientists. For 15 years we've been preparing. Now it's time to act. We have 4 months before the convergence launches their attack. We're going to make sure they never get the chance. He gestured to the display and it zoomed out to show several star systems beyond Earth. These are convergent staging areas, lightly defended outposts where they've been storing supplies and equipment for their invasion. We're going to hit them one by one. Jake studied the targets carefully. Each outpost was positioned in a different system, separated by dozens of light years. How do we hit multiple targets without them warning each other? That's where communications warfare comes in, Walsh said. He nodded to Sophie and Marcus, who stood at their own console. Explain. Marcus stepped forward. We've spent the last 2 weeks finishing our infiltration of the Convergence communication network. As of yesterday, we have full access. We can monitor their messages and, more importantly, we can send our own. Sophie activated a recording. An alien voice spoke in a harsh, clicking language. Subtitles appeared below the hologram. This is Commander Vesh of the Kreth Empire to Supply Station 7. Acknowledge. Another alien voice responded. The conversation was routine, a simple status check. Then Sophie stopped the playback. That first voice wasn't a Kreth commander, she said. It was our computer using their encryption codes and voice patterns. We can impersonate any species in the convergence. They have no way to tell the difference. Which means, Marcus continued, when we attack an outpost, we can prevent them from sending warnings. We can make it look like everything is normal. And better yet, we can make it look like their own allies attacked them. The implications slowly dawned on everyone in the room. They could turn the convergence against itself without the aliens ever knowing humans were involved. The first target is Supply Station Gamma, Walsh said, highlighting one of the red markers. It's run by the Salth, guarded by a single patrol ship. Ryan, your Ghost Squadron will handle this one. Get in. Destroy the station, take any prisoners and technology you can, then get out. Make it look like the Vex did it. Ryan nodded. Understood, sir. When do we leave? 48 hours. Morrison, your ship isn't ready for this mission, but you'll observe and learn. Nicole will command the Defiant systems check while you're gone. The next 2 days passed in a blur of final preparations. Jake watched as the Ghost Squadron made ready. Each stealth frigate was loaded with weapons specifically designed to mimic Vex technology. The attack would leave evidence pointing directly at one of the Convergence's own members. When launch day arrived, Jake boarded Ryan's ship, the Shadow. The frigate was cramped inside, every space utilized for equipment and weapons. The crew was small, just 15 people, but they moved with practiced efficiency. Strap in, Ryan said as he settled into the pilot's seat. This is going to be a long jump. The Shadow and her sister ships activated their phase shift drives. Reality seemed to shimmer around them, and then they were gone, invisible to any observer. The fleet jumped to hyperspace and the stars turned into streaks of light. During the 3-day journey, Jake learned more about stealth operations. The Ghost Squadron pilots were different from regular military officers. They were patient, methodical, and comfortable with silence. Their ships ran on minimal power to avoid detection, even in hyperspace. We're ghosts, Ryan explained. We get in, complete the mission, and vanish before anyone knows we were there. The Convergence has never faced an enemy they couldn't see. They dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the target system. Immediately, the stealth systems activated fully. Jake watched the monitors as the Shadow became virtually undetectable. Even to his own eyes, the other frigates in their squadron seemed to fade from view. There's the station, Ryan said quietly. On the display, Supply Station Gamma appeared. It was a large orbital structure orbiting a dead moon. The station bristled with antenna and docking ports. A single Salt patrol ship circled lazily around it. Sophie, you there? Ryan asked over the secure channel back to Earth. Reading you clearly. Sophie's voice came back. I've tapped into the station's communication system. They're not expecting anything. The patrol ship is scheduled to dock in 20 minutes for a crew rotation. Perfect. We wait until they dock, then we strike. The minutes crawled by. Jake felt his heart pounding as they drifted closer to the station. This wasn't a simulation. This was real. They were about to attack an alien military installation, and if anything went wrong, they could start an interstellar war before humanity was ready. The patrol ship docked. Ryan counted to 60, then gave the order. All ships weapons free. Target the communication array first, then the weapons platforms. Make it loud. The Ghost Squadron opened fire. The weapons they used were human-made but designed to look like Vex technology. Energy beams lanced across space, striking the station's communication dish and destroying it in a shower of sparks and debris. Alarms blared on the station. The Salth scrambled to respond, but they were too slow. The Ghost Squadron systematically destroyed every weapon the station had, while Sophie, back on Earth, sent fake messages making it appear the station was under attack by Vex forces. Deploying boarding teams, Ryan announced. Small shuttles launched from the frigates, still cloaked by stealth fields. They latched onto the station's hull, and Marines in powered armor cut through the outer walls. Jake watched through helmet cameras as human soldiers stormed the station. The Salth defenders fought back, but they were confused and disorganized. They believed they were being attacked by their own allies. Some tried to surrender. Others fought to the death. Within 30 minutes, the station was secured. Gather everything, Ryan ordered. Technology, data cores, prisoners. We have 15 minutes before we need to leave. The Marines moved quickly, stripping the station of anything valuable. They captured 3 Salth officers who would be interrogated back on Earth. They took computers containing intelligence about Convergence fleet movements. They even seized several pieces of alien technology that Earth scientists had never seen before. As the boarding teams retreated, the Ghost Squadron planted charges throughout the station. When they were a safe distance away, Ryan gave the order. The station exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Debris scattered across the moon's orbit. When Convergence investigators eventually arrived, all they would find was wreckage and evidence pointing to Vex weapons. Mission accomplished, Ryan reported. No casualties. Heading home. The fleet jumped back to hyperspace, and Jake finally allowed himself to breathe. They had done it. The first strike was complete, but it was just the beginning. Over the next 6 weeks, the Ghost Squadron launched 4 more raids. Each one targeted a different species outpost. Each one was made to look like the work of a different convergence member. And each time, Sophie and Marcus sent carefully crafted messages deepening the suspicion between alien species. The effect was better than anyone had hoped. Convergence communications, which Sophie monitored constantly, became increasingly hostile. Species accused each other of betrayal. Defense meetings turned into arguments. Some members began pulling their forces back to protect their own territory. Meanwhile, Jake and the Defiant crew completed their training. Nicole had shaped them into a cohesive unit ready for combat. But Jake wanted more than readiness. He wanted to test their ship against a real target. Admiral Walsh approved a special mission. Intelligence had located the Nexus Array, a massive relay station that coordinated all convergence faster-than-light communications. Destroying it would cripple their ability to coordinate during the coming war. "This is going to be dangerous," Walsh warned. "The Nexus is heavily defended. We'll lose ships, maybe a lot of them." "Then we'll make it count," Jake replied. The Defiant launched with an escort of 6 stealth frigates. They jumped to the edge of the Nexus Array's system and began their approach. Unlike the supply station raids, this target was ready for trouble. Patrol ships circled the array constantly. Weapon platforms covered every approach. This wasn't going to be a quiet infiltration. "All ships, listen up," Jake said over the fleet channel. "We're going in fast and hard. The frigates will take out the patrol ships. Defiant will handle the array itself. Once we're done, we jump immediately. No second passes, no cleanup. We hit and run." They accelerated toward the target at maximum speed. Alarms began blaring on the convergence ships as they detected the approaching fleet. But by then it was too late. The Ghost Squadron decloaked and opened fire. Their surprise attack destroyed 2 patrol ships before the aliens could react. The remaining 3 ships scrambled to respond, but they were designed for policing, not combat against a prepared enemy. The Defiant charged straight at the Nexus Array. Its quantum disruptor cannons fired continuously, overwhelming the station's shields. Nicole coordinated the weapons with precision, targeting the array's most vulnerable points. But the convergence wasn't helpless. The underground facility hummed with urgent activity. 3 months had passed since the destruction of the Nexus Array, and the effects were rippling through the convergence like cracks spreading across ice. Sophie sat hunched over her console, dark circles under her eyes from days of minimal sleep. The streams of intercepted alien communications scrolling across her screens told a story of an alliance falling apart. "Listen to this," she said as Admiral Walsh and Jake entered the communications center. She played a recording of 2 alien commanders arguing, their translated voices sharp with anger. "The Vryn betrayed us at Station Gamma. The evidence is clear." "You're a fool. The Vryn accuse us of the same. Someone is manipulating us all." "Then who?" "The humans are primitives. They don't even have shields," Sophie stopped the playback. "They're starting to suspect something is wrong, but they can't agree on what. Each species blames a different member of the convergence." "Time to make it worse," Walsh said. He turned to Marcus, who was working at the adjacent station. "Are we ready for Operation Serpent's Tooth?" Marcus nodded, a grim smile on his face. "Ready, sir. This is going to be our biggest deception yet." Over the next hour, Marcus explained the operation. Using their access to the Convergence communication network, they would plant false evidence suggesting that the Vryn, one of the most powerful species in the Alliance, was planning to betray everyone else. Fabricated messages would show Vryn commanders discussing how they would seize control of conquered Earth for themselves and eliminate their allies. "The beauty of it," Marcus said, "is that we're using their own paranoia against them. They already don't trust each other. We're just giving them a reason to act on that distrust." "Do it," Walsh ordered. The false messages were sent through channels that made them appear to be legitimate Vryn communications. Marcus and Sophie had spent weeks perfecting the forgeries, down to the smallest linguistic details. To any convergent species monitoring those channels, the messages would seem completely authentic. The response was immediate and dramatic. Within 48 hours, 3 species began withdrawing their fleets from the staging areas. The Soth demanded an emergency council meeting to address the Vryn's alleged treachery. The Kreth sent warships to blockade Vryn territory. "It's working better than we hoped," Sophie reported. "The convergence is tearing itself apart. But not everyone in the alien alliance was fooled. High Executor Zarvesh, A Kreth commander known for his tactical brilliance had begun asking dangerous questions. Intelligence intercepts showed him ordering detailed analyses of every attack looking for patterns. "He's smart," Jake said, reading the reports. "He's going to figure out that something doesn't add up." "Then we need to deal with him," Walsh replied. "If Zarvesh convinces the Convergence that humans are behind this, they might unite against us before we're ready." A new mission was planned. The Defiant, now fully repaired from the battle at the Nexus Array, would hunt down Zarvesh's ship. The objective was simple: eliminate the one enemy commander who might expose humanity's deception. Jake gathered his crew for a briefing. Nicole stood beside him as they reviewed intelligence about their target. Zarvesh commanded the battlecruiser Eternal Dominion, the same ship that had nearly destroyed them at the Nexus Array. "This won't be easy," Jake told his crew honestly. "The Dominion is more powerful than us in every measurable way. But we have advantages. We're faster, more maneuverable, and we think differently than they do." One of the younger officers raised her hand. "Sir, how do we beat a ship that big?" "We don't fight it the way it expects," Jake replied. "We make it think we're doing one thing, then do something completely different. We turn our weaknesses into weapons." They spent 3 days planning and preparing. Nicole suggested using the Defiant's damaged reactor, which had been partially repaired but still leaked radiation, as a weapon. The engineering team worked out how to vent the radioactive plasma in a controlled burst that would blind enemy sensors. When they were ready, the Defiant launched with a small escort of stealth frigates. Intelligence had tracked Zarvesh to a system near Convergence Space, where he was investigating the remains of one of the destroyed outposts. "Remember," Jake said as they approached the system, "Zarvesh is trying to find proof that humans are involved. We can't leave any evidence behind." They dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. The Eternal Dominion was exactly where intelligence said it would be, slowly orbiting the wreckage of the outpost. The battlecruiser's sensors swept the area constantly, searching for any sign of deception. "He's cautious," Nicole observed. "Look at his patrol pattern. He's not taking any chances." Jake studied the enemy ship's movements. Zarvesh was good, maybe the best commander the Convergence had. This wasn't going to be like their previous encounters. This would be a battle of wits as much as weapons. "Launch probes," Jake ordered. "Make them look like debris from the destroyed station." Small drones were fired from the Defiant, each one programmed to drift naturally toward the battlecruiser while broadcasting faint energy signatures. They were designed to look like wreckage, but hidden inside each probe was a sensor package that would map the Eternal Dominion's defenses. It almost worked. The probes drifted closer, and the battlecruiser's automated systems began pulling them in for analysis. But at the last moment, Zarvesh must have realized something was wrong. The Eternal Dominion opened fire, destroying all the probes simultaneously. Then its massive engines flared to life, and the ship turned directly toward the Defiant's position. "He knows we're here," Nicole said. "How?" "Because he's that good," Jake replied. "All ships, evasive maneuvers. Engage the enemy." The Defiant and its escorts accelerated, weapons firing. The quantum disruptor cannons hammered at the battlecruiser's shields, but the bigger ship had multiple redundant shield generators. For every shield section the Defiant destroyed, another activated to replace it. The Eternal Dominion returned fire with devastating accuracy. One of the stealth frigates was hit and exploded. Another took damage and limped away, trailing atmosphere from a hull breach. "We can't win a direct fight," Nicole said. "Sir, we need to retreat." "Not yet," Jake said. He was watching the battlecruiser's movements, looking for patterns. Zarvesh was a traditional military commander. He followed the standard Kreth tactical doctrine, which meant his ship's movements were predictable if you knew what to look for. Engineering: prepare to vent the reactor coolant on my mark. Navigation: I need you to plot a spiral approach pattern that brings us within 100 meters of the Dominion sensor array. "Sir, that's suicide," the navigator protested. "Their point defense will shred us." "Trust me," Jake said calmly. "Sophie, I need you to broadcast a fake distress signal. Make it look like our reactor is failing." Sophie's voice came back over the channel from Earth, delayed slightly by distance. "Done. They should be picking it up now." The Defiant began listing to one side, its engines sputtering as if damaged. The distress signal broadcast across all frequencies, warning that the ship's reactor was about to explode. Zarvesh took the bait. The Eternal Dominion changed course, moving to a safer distance to avoid being caught in the explosion. It was exactly what Jake had hoped for. "Now," he shouted. Full power, straight at their sensor array. The Defiant surged forward, its engines at maximum thrust. The sudden acceleration caught the battlecruiser off guard. Point defense weapons fired. But the smaller ship was moving too fast and too erratically. They missed. "Vent the reactor," Jake ordered. The Defiant's damaged reactor core opened, releasing a massive cloud of superheated radioactive plasma. The cloud engulfed the Eternal Dominion's forward sensor array, the intense radiation and heat overwhelming the delicate equipment. Suddenly blind, the battlecruiser flailed. Its weapons fired randomly, trying to hit an enemy it could no longer see. "All ships concentrate fire on their shield generators," Jake commanded. The Defiant and the remaining frigates focused their weapons on specific points along the battlecruiser's hull. Without functioning sensors, Zarvesh couldn't coordinate his shields properly. One by one, the generators overloaded and failed. "Target their bridge," Jake said quietly. Nicole locked weapons on the battlecruiser's command center. The quantum disruptors fired, punching through the weakened armor. The bridge exploded in a cascade of secondary detonations. The Eternal Dominion went dark, its command structure destroyed. Emergency systems tried to activate, but the damage was too severe. The massive ship began drifting, dead in space. "Send boarding teams," Jake ordered. "We need to capture Zarvesh and recover any intelligence about what he knew." Marines in powered armor crossed from the Defiant to the crippled battlecruiser. They fought through automated defenses and scattered pockets of surviving Kreth warriors. The battle inside the ship was brutal and close quarters, but the humans had surprise and superior armor on their side. They found Zarvesh in an emergency command center deep inside the ship. The Kreth commander was wounded but alive, still trying to rally his remaining crew. When he saw the humans, his eyes widened in shock. "Impossible," he said in translated speech. "The humans did all of this?" Before anyone could respond, Zarvesh reached for a weapon. Colonel Ryan Foster, who had joined the mission to gain combat experience, fired first. The alert klaxons blared throughout the underground facility, their urgent wail cutting through the normal background noise. Admiral Walsh strode into the command center, his face grim. Officers and analysts scrambled to their stations as data flooded in from deep space sensors. "Report," Walsh demanded. Sophie looked up from her console, her face pale. "Admiral, we have a major fleet movement. The Kreth Empire has launched early. 200 warships are en route to Earth." 200? Walsh's jaw tightened. "What about the rest of the convergence?" "They're not with the Kreth," Marcus added, his fingers flying across his keyboard as he analyzed communication intercepts. "The Kreth commander, War Admiral Thrain, has decided to attack alone. He no longer trusts the other species. He thinks he can conquer Earth by himself and claim all the resources." Jake stood near the tactical display, watching the red markers representing enemy ships move steadily toward the solar system. "How long until they arrive?" 8 hours, Sophie replied. "They're pushing their engines hard. They want to hit us before we're fully prepared." Walsh turned to the assembled officers. "This is what we've been preparing for. Contact all fleet commanders. Launch all ships. This is not a drill. We're going to war." The next hour passed in controlled chaos. Every ship in Earth's secret fleet launched from hidden bases around the solar system. The Ghost Squadron emerged from their hangars. The Defiant and dozens of other warships took up defensive positions. Thousands of personnel moved to battle stations. Jake stood on the bridge of the Defiant, Nicole at his side. Around them, the crew worked with practiced efficiency, running final systems checks and loading weapons. Through the viewport, he could see other human ships taking formation. "All ships reporting ready, sir," Nicole said. "We have 120 vessels. We're outnumbered almost 2 to 1. "Numbers aren't everything," Jake replied. "We have advantages they don't know about." Admiral Walsh's face appeared on the main screen, broadcasting to every ship in the fleet. "This is it, people. Everything we've worked for comes down to the next few hours. The Kreth think they're attacking a primitive world with minimal defenses. They're about to learn how wrong they are. Remember your training. Trust your crews, and show these aliens what humanity is made of." The Kreth fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. The alien warships were massive and intimidating, their hulls covered in weapons and armor. At their center was the Eternal Dominion, War Admiral Thrain's flagship. a dreadnought 3 times larger than anything humanity had built. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, Sophie reported from her station back on Earth. Demanding our immediate surrender. Give me a channel, Walsh ordered. When it was open, he spoke clearly. This is Admiral Henry Walsh of the United Earth Defense Force. You've made a mistake coming here. Turn back now or face the consequences. Thrain's response was laughter. The Kreth commander appeared on screen, a towering figure with armored scales and cold, predatory eyes. You dare threaten me? Your primitive fleet cannot stand against the might of the Kreth Empire. Surrender now and I will make your deaths quick. Then come and take us, Walsh replied, cutting the transmission. The Kreth fleet accelerated toward Earth. Their formation was tight and disciplined, a wall of warships that seemed unstoppable. But Walsh wasn't planning to stop them head-on. Go Squadron, execute Phase 1, he ordered. The stealth frigates, which had been waiting in silent mode throughout the system, activated. They appeared on sensors for just a moment, fired their weapons at the rear of the Kreth formation, then vanished again. 3 Kreth ships exploded before the aliens even knew they were under attack. Confusion rippled through the enemy fleet as they tried to locate the attackers that were no longer there. Phase 2, Walsh commanded. All ships activate quantum disruptors. The main human fleet opened fire. Beams of energy lanced across space, striking Kreth shields. The aliens expected the shields to hold. They didn't. The quantum disruptors destabilized the shield generators, and one by one the protective barriers collapsed. What is this? Thrain roared. How do they have this technology? His tactical officer had no answer. The Kreth had faced hundreds of enemies across thousands of battles. None had ever possessed weapons that could bypass their shields so easily. The battle intensified. Kreth ships returned fire, their powerful guns hammering at the human fleet. Earth ships were hit and damaged, some destroyed. The Defiant took a direct hit that knocked out its secondary weapons and killed 5 crew members. But the humans kept fighting, using tactics the Kreth had never encountered. Ships broke formation and attacked from unexpected angles. Some pretended to retreat, then turned and fired at pursuing enemies. Others used debris from destroyed ships as cover. They fight like animals, Thrain spat. No discipline, no honor. But his fleet was taking heavy losses. 60 Kreth ships had been destroyed, and dozens more were damaged. The humans had lost 30 vessels, but they were holding their ground. Jake watched the tactical display, looking for an opening. The Kreth flagship, the Eternal Dominion, was at the center of their formation, protected by layers of escort ships. That's where they needed to strike. Admiral, I have a plan, Jake said over the command channel. But it's risky. Tell me. We need to capture the Dominion intact to power Dr. Chang's Cascade device. I can do it, but I need the Ghost Squadron to cover me, and I need every other ship to keep the rest of the Kreth fleet busy. There was a pause. Then Walsh spoke. Do it. All ships support the Defiant's assault on the flagship. Ryan, get your people in position. The Defiant broke from the main formation and accelerated directly toward the Eternal Dominion. The move was so unexpected and seemingly suicidal that the Kreth didn't react immediately. By the time they did, it was too late. The Ghost Squadron appeared from nowhere, their weapons destroying the escort ships protecting the flagship. The Defiant charged through the gap, dodging fire from point defense weapons. Disable their engines, not their reactor, Jake ordered. We need that ship functional. Nicole coordinated the attack with precision. Quantum disruptors targeted the Dominion's engine section, while conventional weapons took out its gun batteries. The massive dreadnought tried to turn, but it was too slow and too large to evade the smaller, faster human ship. Prepare for boarding, Jake said. Marines, you're up? The Defiant locked onto the Dominion's hull with magnetic clamps. Cutting torches burned through the alien armor, and human Marines poured into the enemy ship. They fought deck by deck, corridor by corridor, pushing toward the bridge. Colonel Ryan Foster led the assault, his powered armor deflecting Kreth weapons fire. His team moved with practiced efficiency, clearing rooms and securing passages. But the Kreth fought desperately, knowing that losing their flagship would mean losing the battle. Ryan reached a heavily defended section near the engine room. Kreth warriors had barricaded themselves inside, their weapons cutting down anyone who tried to approach. We're pinned down, Ryan reported. I need support. I'm coming, Jake said. He turned to Nicole. You have the bridge. Sir, you're the captain. You can't. That's an order, Commander. Jake grabbed a rifle and joined the Marines fighting inside the Dominion. The corridors were filled with smoke and the sounds of battle. Bodies, both human and alien, littered the floor. But the Marines were pushing forward, gaining ground meter by meter. Jake found Ryan and his team taking cover behind a collapsed bulkhead. Kreth weapons fire kept them suppressed. "We can't get through," Ryan said. "There's too many of them." Jake looked at the barricade, thinking quickly. Then he noticed the ventilation shaft above them. "Can you fit through there in your armor?" "Maybe if I ditch the heavy plating." "Do it. Take 3 of your best people. Flank them from above while I draw their fire." Ryan nodded and began stripping off the bulkier parts of his armor. Jake waited until the team was in position, then stepped into the open corridor. "Hey," he shouted at the Kreth warriors. "Over here!" Weapons fire erupted, forcing Jake to dive for cover. But the distraction worked. Ryan and his team dropped from the ventilation shaft behind the barricade, catching the Kreth by surprise. The fight was brief and brutal. When it was over, the path to the bridge was clear. They reached the Dominion's command center to find War Admiral Thrain standing alone, his guards dead around him. The Kreth commander held a plasma blade, his body language defiant despite his situation. "You cannot win," Thrain said. "Even if you take my ship, the rest of the convergence will come. They will destroy you." "They're already here," Jake replied. Sophie's voice came over the communication channel, urgent and frightened. "Admiral, new contacts. The remaining 11 convergent species just jumped into the system. Over 1,000 ships." On the tactical display, the solar system suddenly filled with red markers. An armada unlike anything humanity had ever faced bore down on Earth. The Kreth fleet they were currently fighting was just the advance guard. "We have 4 hours before they arrive in weapons range," Sophie continued. "Sir, we can't fight them all." Jake looked at Thrain. "Surrender your ship, now, or watch your empire die alongside ours." Thrain hesitated, his pride warring with pragmatism. Finally, he dropped his weapon. "What do you want?" "Your reactor. We need it to power a weapon." "What weapon could possibly?"